I saw a great big tourist bus.
Hi, welcome to my home. I'm Marilyn Ellie. I'm with the Indian Point Convergence, and we had a meeting today. Special thanks to Charlie Olson, who's behind the camera. Coming home from the meeting, we were talking, and Charlie had a brilliant idea. We're trying some video minutes. It's hard to read minutes. Everybody's email is full, so here's a short, brief summary of what we worked on all afternoon in regard to closing Indian Point. One of the first things we talked about was what is a just transition and what happens when a nuclear plant closes. What about the workers? And what is the role of the Indian Point Safe Energy Coalition in that kind of discussion? We have mixed opinions in our group about it, and I'm sure we'll come back and talk about it again. But one thing that we did agree on is that we're certainly in no position to be offering plans and advice to those who very well may lose their jobs or have to retrain for other jobs when Indian Point closes. Diablo Canyon, which is just closing in California, it's a California reactor. They've made a plan over 9 years to close that reactor, and the unions were a very important part of that plan. And it seems like people there will be retraining for new jobs. They will be hired in the decommissioning process, and people that are working for the reactor right now will be helped to find gainful employment. That's a good thing, and we would certainly wish that for all of the employees at Indian Point. They will have to take a lot of that responsibility for themselves, and they'll have to be having those talks with people in our local and county and state governments who have a lot more resources to deal with things like that. And of course, we would wish them all well, that it would be as easy as possible. It's they have good paying jobs there, and a transition is never easy. The other thing we talked about was, and I'm going to put it in little air quotes, replacement energy. That's a term that I personally am not going to use again. People want to know, what's the replacement electricity for Indian Point? We don't need any replacement electricity for Indian Point. Indian Point has already been replaced. What we have is energy sufficiency. We have a surplus, actually more than a sufficiency. We have an energy surplus. And if Indian Point would close down now, other generators are available, other sources are available, and there would not be a problem. Indian Point is online and working right now because of the way our electricity market works, because we pay such high electricity rates, because of congestion pricing and things like that. But should the owners of that plant want to take it offline, they could do that, and plans have been made so that our grid would not be in any trouble. When it goes off unexpectedly, which it certainly has done quite a bit this year, they now have a yellow finding, they have a green finding. Because of that, because of their frequent outages, your lights don't blink and nothing happens. Life goes on outside that plant just as usual. And that's what would happen if it went offline permanently. We fought a very hard fight, all of us in the green community fought a very hard fight against Tier 3, which was Governor Cuomo's direction to the Public Service Commission to include several upstate nuclear reactors in the clean energy plan. It's called Tier 3. We lost that fight, unfortunately. So what that means is that they're getting a subsidy, and where that subsidy comes from is from your pocket, from my pocket, from all the pockets of the taxpayers throughout New York State. And I think that's very unjust. We have our own nuclear issues to worry about. I don't know why we need to be paying for upstate nuclear issues, but that's the way it was scheduled. There are several issues with that, and I was delighted to get a letter from 5 different state assemblymen. I'll read you their names just in case you know some of them. These are downstate legislators, our representatives in Albany, who are very concerned about downstate constituents paying 60% of the cost of that nuclear bailout for upstate nuclear power. And one is Assemblyman Jim Brennan, one is Assembly Member Jeffrey Denowitz, one is Assembly Member Stephen Engelbright, the other is Assembly Member Amy Paulin, and the last is Assembly Member Charles Levine. And what they're saying, and they're writing to, let me go back to the beginning. They're writing to Audrey Zemmelman, who's the chair of the Public Service Commission. They've made a lot of good points. What I will do is I'll post this letter to our listserv so you can read the whole letter for yourself. But very briefly, they're saying that we're paying downstate 60% of the tax, and that's not fair, particularly considering that the costs that the nuclear industry says they have are not being made public. They have been sealed. So these legislators are asking for three main points. Point number one, redetermine the share of the burden of the rate increase on downstate customers and publish the basis for its cost allocations. In other words, why are we paying for this? Why aren't the people who are affected paying for it? Two, unseal the record of the cost reviews of the nuclear fleet. I would point out, this is me talking, not them, I would point out that public money is being used for this. So why the public is not entitled to know what these costs are sounds very fishy to me. Well, they want the cost review made public so that the basis for the amount and the subsidies Exelon is receiving be made public. Sounds very sensible. And number three, eliminate the subsidy for 9 Mile 2, that's a reactor upstate, at least until the next refueling of the unit, but not until the cost reviews for the nuclear fleet is made public. So they've really looked at this very carefully. And I'm very grateful to this kind of really forethought on the part of some of our legislators. We talked about this, and here's what we decided to do. We decided that, when have you read about this in the newspaper? You haven't. So how can we make it public? How can we step in where the media has really failed? And one of the things that we want to do, of course, is ask you to write letters and involve your own elected officials. The other thing that we can do is we can put it on our website and send it out to all of our lists and put it on our Facebook page and ask you to share. I hope you visit our Facebook page regularly and click share so that information goes out. You could click like, that helps too. So every time you go, click like and click share. That's one way to spread information. And when you see something on the website, which I hope that you will start visiting regularly, people have not been doing that. So regard this as a charge to visit the website regularly. And I'm going to be more involved in that website now. I will make it a point to see that every time you visit, there's something new and exciting for you to see. The other thing that we will do is a petition. For this. This will be our petition from now on until we can get some answers, asking that our local elected officials join these four pioneers and really make some demands to protect their downstate constituents for paying 60% of this nuclear subsidy, which should not be in place at all anyway. So that was a very interesting discussion. You really had to be there to really appreciate it, but it was very interesting, and really, it was an exciting meeting. We have a notice from the NRC. We talked about that. The NRC is seeking comment on proposed changes to its public meeting policy. One thing that I have discovered is going to these meetings really always gives you more opportunities and different ways to look at things. They're going to have an observation meeting, they're going to have an information meeting with a question and answer session, and they're going to have a comment gathering session. When I thought about this, I said, well, they need to have a 30-day notice, they need to be recording all of the minutes and have recorded minutes from all the meetings. And when they have a meeting with public officials, it needs to be open to the public for observation. So they didn't have any of this. What came out at the meeting was, why are they doing this? Is this going to replace our other meetings of the annual assessment, or is this in addition to? And, what does it mean to have an information meeting with questions and answers? Who gets to ask the questions, who gets to answer them? So a letter will be written to the liaison with the NRC, and it was just very interesting to have this conversation and have it from all different viewpoints and have all these different questions come up. So in that regard, stay tuned for the next installment. We have until the middle of November to submit our suggestions for this. Have you seen our advertisement? Margot Shephart and Charlie Olson and a host of other people, Susan Shapiro, Michelle Lee, and many, many others were very, very instrumental in bringing Margot's idea for clean air and clean water ed to fruition. It is running on channel 12 and 30-second spot. And it references, for details, it references our website, which is www.ipsicinfo.org. And there's all the documentation for what we're saying about Indian Point in regard to the release of greenhouse gases and also radioactive isotopes. So we are sending out, Margot is sending out notices of when the ad is running. I hope you get to see it. And even if you don't see it on television, the link has gone out so you can click on it. So you can see it on the Environment TV. The link will go out for that. And what the Environment TV does is it provides us a way to educate others and ourselves. So take advantage of that opportunity. Now we have the last one is Barges on the Hudson, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about. It's really united all of the river towns, and we don't have a major role to play in this, except to notice where is the nearest parking lot to Indian Point, and what would happen if those barges leaked. And how would that affect the intake of Indian Point from all the water, the 2.5 billion gallons that they take in every day? What would happen if there was an oil leak and they were taking in oily water inside the plant? So those are some questions that we need to ask. And I would just put out as really as an activist and a citizen, this is not something by the federal government. This is not the federal government pulling wool over our eyes. This is the Coast Guard putting out, scoping out a situation that a request from the industry. It's part of their procedure, and frankly, I wish all of our federal agencies would be as open as the Coast Guard has been about this. The industry came to them with a proposal. They're putting it out for all the voices, and I understand they've been very surprised at all of the reactions. And after that, they will scope out some kind of regulation, and they will post it. They will have public comments, and take it from there and see what happens. People are asking, why is the industry asking for this now? And I don't have any proof one way or the other. However, there does seem to be a glut of oil, and the port of Albany gets very crowded. It's all for export. It's not for use in this country. It's for export where there's more money to be made. But if the port of Albany gets very crowded, these barges need a stopping place outside of New York City. And the parking lots on the Hudson would be very handy for them to increase their profits. So that's sort of the backstory. Feel free to contact the Coast Guard. You can look up Barges on the Hudson and find out much more information about that. And that's not even really an Indian Point issue, except it's how it does focus on the intake from the water. We will be pursuing our advertising campaign because media coverage has been non-existent. Look for it. If you can help us, we'd be glad to have your help with that, either with ideas or if you want to make a financial contribution. That is always welcome. We fly by the seat of our pants and the skin of our teeth. So your money really will help make more advertisements. What Margot said today was it takes $90 for, I think, a 10-second ad during drive time. And maybe we'll be asking people to sponsor that, and you could decide what you would like for your 10-second ad to be about. The evacuation zone, ionizing radiation. We're open for ideas. So you can contact me, Marilyn Ellie. I'm at Ellie Westcan. That's E-L-I-E Westcan. WESTCAN at gmail.com. I'm sure it'll be up on the screen and you can see it better. And you can always go to our website, which is ipsicinfo.org. Thank you for your attention for the minutes to this meeting. I hope you can join us at the Convergence. We meet generally the first Sunday of every month at Stony Point. Today was an exception because of the schedule at Stony Point, and sometimes we have a different meeting date because of the holidays. But generally, we meet the first Sunday of every month at 1:30, and all are welcome. Thank you for joining me.
I saw a great big tourist bus of folks from out of town. For 40 days and 40 nights, they covered miles of ground. They had a map and compass, but they still were not arriving. Oh, they couldn't get to Pleasantville, so they kept on driving.